Go for it. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2021 Jozi.js. We greeted you with this lovely picture at the beginning of last year, so we thought we'd just edit it a little bit to make it fit for this year's meetup. Before you get too excited about 2020 being over, please just keep in mind that Mad Max takes place in 2021. And on that lovely note, we are back and we're still online, but we're hoping that one day soon we'll all be back together, eating pizza and talking about JavaScript as we do. Thanks for all of those of you who are here tonight listening to our talks. Please keep in mind that we do have a code of conduct, and the main rule of our code of conduct is to be nice. Just be nice to each other, be understanding, be respectful and constructive. We're not here to mock someone's framework or to hate on some language. We're just here to talk about JavaScript and work together. Don't be spammy. Yep. If you have any problems with our code of conduct or anyone harassing you, please feel free to contact one of our wizards. These people that you see here help organize this event. And we're still out on the wizard hats. Still hasn't been decided whether we're getting those or not. And lastly, quick thanks to all of our sponsors, Inesis, for our online streaming sponsorship, BBD, that sponsor our food and venue when we have real events, and Microsoft for our meetup sponsorship. If you are interested in speaking about anything JavaScript related, please submit a talk. The link is also in the description of the video you're watching, so you can also click on it there. If you're a new speaker, we welcome new speakers. That's always great. We're happy to give you feedback. If you want to do a practice round, we'll be happy to do that as well beforehand. The Watch Past Talks link is also there, but if you're already watching this, you've already been to our YouTube channel, so we're still not sure why we keep that one around. Anyway, if you have any questions for the speakers tonight, please go to Slido and ask them on there. This information is also in the description of the video, so you can, if you forget or you don't get this right now, you can go get it from there. And we'll post the link again in the chat as well. And that's pretty much it from me. And now I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker for today. Our first speaker is Deon. He's going to be talking to us about ClojureScript. And Deon, you can take over.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen here. Oop. Okay. So I'd like to talk about live coding in ClojureScript, which compiles to JavaScript, so that's how it's related, on React and WebSockets. I am Deon. I'm the lead dev at YuppieChef, and I kind of wanted to just have put together a little thing to show what it's like to have this environment and what it's like to live code in this thing. So I'll put together something. You'll see the GitHub link at the bottom right corner there, or it might be shared somewhere else you can click on. I've got the base. I've got the base project there and the full project that you can both run. There's instructions there for you to clone it and enjoy that at your own pace. So I don't have that much time, so I want to just it's going to be quite a fast-paced thing. But I'll just quickly want to cover one or two other things. So why Clojure? So there's a lot of information out there about, what exactly Clojure is and all that kind of stuff. This is my personal thing, why I like Clojure personally. So it's a very subjective kind of thing. So the first thing is it's fun. It feels like you're cheating. You're just enjoying yourself pretty much all the time. I've been coding in Clojure since about 2012, and just every day is still exciting and interesting. It's very expressive, so you get to focus on stuff you care about. You end up doing like most of your thinking around what you're actually trying to do, and very little on all the other language pedantics. So it's very reliable. So once something works, like you forget about it. It just carries on going and going and going. Years later, you come back to it and you go, oh, okay, I wrote that. It's still doing its thing. It's predictable. So you end up, when you're writing, you tend to not actually even go back and forth very much, because, well, once you kind of get the hang of all the way that everything kind of works, you kind of write your code, you're done, and carry on going. And did I mention it's fun? Life is just too short to bashing your head. So I really enjoy that. Okay. And then I just want to quickly touch on syntax, because Clojure is a Lisp, so it's a bit different to JavaScript and Java and the C# and so on and so on. So you'll see a little snippet at the bottom right there. I'm just going to quickly, briefly go over this. The idea is not to teach it at all, just to give you a little bit of familiarity so you can kind of follow along, like squint a little bit and pretend you understand what's going on. That's all you need to really do. But basically down at the bottom here, you're defining a function called info, and it returns this a map. And this pretty much is the entire language in a little nutshell. There's basic values like you'd be used to them. There's the only added ones would be a ratio of 22/7. There's symbols that you use for variable things or whatever. There's keywords which you use for map lookups, similar to what you do in strings and JSON. There's 4 different collection types: lists, which are singly linked lists; vectors, which are efficient to look up like any indexed place, but mostly they work kind of the same. There's maps, so the key value pair maps. It's like JSON, but drop all the commas, drop the little arrow things, drop everything off the colons, and drop everything else. It's just spaces. And there's mathematical sets. So there's like unicorns and rainbows. That's a set of 2 different keywords. And that's pretty much the entire data structure you're going to be working with in Clojure. Everything is immutable. So these collections are actual values that you can connect each, have equivalents to each other. And nothing, you can't go and change it. You just create new versions of the same thing. They have what's called persistent collections. So there's techniques for making that memory efficient and speed efficient, because you don't go copy everything. But that's kind of like underpinning. Okay. So that kind of covers that part. The next is, this is what I've already done in the project. So I've got a base setup going. I had this wild idea that I'm going to start the whole project from scratch, and I'm going to start it up and do this crazy thing. And then I realized, well, half an hour, I'm going to more need like 30 hours. Well, not quite. But yeah, it turned out to be way too much, and it didn't get the essence of what I actually wanted to show. So I've set up the basic like dependencies. I've set up WebSockets to make sure that works properly. A couple of routing functions and comms between the things. I'll show you exactly, but it's not much, but it is. There's a little bit of fickleness involved there. And also, so I'm going to be building a to-do MVC thing. So you can get that at todomvc.com. I don't know if I actually think I have a link there, but that's just like a little framework, so I don't have to design anything, and a lot of people might be familiar with that already. So I just pull those assets in, and so I can get them quite easily. And that's pretty much all that's what I've done. And we're just going to focus on building the front end, and that's going to talk to the server and back again. Okay, and that is it for the slides. Let me pop this down. And so here we go into this. So my project's over here on IntelliJ on the side. I'm going to be loading up the thing here and starting up 2 little terminals over here. So what I have done, if I show the project, this is all there is. I've pulled the base and index CSS from the 2D MVC. Here's the index. We're going to see what that looks like in a bit. These are the server-side com stuff. So just a little bit of nasty looking stuff that you don't have to worry about. Here we've got the base template for the HTML with the head tag and that kind of thing. So this is all expressed as Clojure vectors. So you don't have to have the slash HTML, but basically you can imagine the slash HTML sit at the equally colored bracket. So I've got two components here, index and a base template. I'm just putting this body inside here. Then I've got an app state. I've got some comms that I'm receiving to do start, save, delete, complete. And then I've got some stuff about routing and middleware and yada yada that you don't have to worry about. Okay, and then for initializing the to-do, see, I'm just running through this just to give you a kind of feel for what's there. We're not going to worry too much about these bits after this. This is just the root component that we're going to show on the screen. I'm handling the HTML5 history with this so that when we change, it just updates our state when you click on the different links. So we don't have to worry about that again. Here we're going to shove everything to a little box called an atom. That's going to be our entire state of the application. And that's just going to be defined here. And you'll see I pass this app atom around everywhere. That's something we found particularly useful is instead of making it kind of a global that you access from everywhere, you pass it around because then they can just have a bit more flexibility with a bit more decoupling. So you can actually change that. You can build that somewhere else if you want to, and then reuse the components. They don't really care which box you pass it. It just knows there's a box. Okay, refresh initialization. Okay, so that's that. A little plumbing for handling the WebSockets, send and receive message functions. Is set up the WebSocket. You can kind of mostly ignore just stuff with the CSF token, whatnot. A quick view dispatch kind of thing, so you can dispatch different pages to different views. A little action dispatch super micro framework is literally just a multi-method, so that you'll see that in action later. And some helper functions for input and checkbox properties so that we can wrap that. Okay, it doesn't matter too much the details of that. I just wanted to show you quickly. And so here we go at our this is the place we're going to actually work in. So I try to keep it as minimal as possible. I've kind of included some of the namespaces we're going to need. We've got an initial app state, so that's going to go into that app atom. Here's our initial page and our initial view. The root / goes to do, which connects to this, and that shows this component. So over here, I'm going to just quickly start line wrap all that. So show CLJ's watch there. So this side is what handles the compilation from ClojureScript through to JavaScript, and that's also going to watch any changes that I make over here and then live load them into the tab directly. This is then our backend that the WebSocket is going to talk to. So if I start that, we should get our hello, and it's stale, so better just do this. I don't know why. There we go. Oh, it's still busy compiling. That took very long. Okay, there, done. Okay, so now we've got the whole kind of live thing going. So if I just say hello dev, hello Jozi.js, then we've got that updating directly as I save. So what I want to do next is take the index of HTML and just take this HTML here. Okay, we want this. So we don't care about this individual scripts. Back here, and now luckily the IDE does a lot of my work for me and turns it into a Clojure data structure directly. There's two elements here. So if I save this now, you'll see we've just got the footer because it's only returning the last one. So I need to make this into a list and save that. And there, so this is basically what we're going to be actually making live. Now, the first thing we want to do is probably make a component out of this one. So these are actual React components that just wrapped in a kind of a nice little thing. So this run-dev-c creates a component, gives it a name. Let's say a new to-do, or maybe to-do new. Make that reactive so that it can do changes based on the atom. We take this, we pop it in here. So that's our tag with it for the to-do new. So wait, we need the app atom, save that. Okay, so if I take that out, we lose the top bit. So that's what this is doing. Okay, one thing that React doesn't like autofocus like that. It likes it like this. So then that should work when you refresh. So the next thing we want to just do input props and give it an atom to work with. So now we're going to create a cursor inside of our atom. Let's say it's a new item and the title. So we want to work with a new item. So for the initial state, I want to just give it a new item and say it's got a title of nothing. I like to give it a UID so long, so it has some kind of thing, and maybe date added we can put in later, and completed false. So just give it something to begin with. Input props, and then I need no, that's must be part of there. Okay, it doesn't like that because I need to merge the properties. Okay, yeah. I don't know why that doesn't go away. Okay, so now when I do this, I'm actually altering this value here. So if I go run React, run cursor in, I'm creating a cursor inside of the atom again. That's pretty much the same as this one. I might as well copy it. Copy it again. Ah, come on. There. So I need to react this thing. Trying to move a bit too fast. Hello. It's not liking that. Of course, being silly. I'm trying to put it inside the div instead of there. So let me run React that here. So I'm actually like this is the same part of it that's actually in the state. So that'll just re-render like that. So what we want to do is when you hit enter, it needs to create a new one. So we can just do a on key up. Just like this is basically just a JavaScript function. It does exactly, it gives you an argument that has the on key, the key event. So we want to say when dot dash key code. So this is direct JavaScript interop. When that is 13, which is our lovely old enter key, we want to dispatch an action, which is, let's say, to do new, and well, we don't need to give it anything because we pull the state out of the thing. So that's basically just doing our little this action dispatch microframework thing. So I'm just going to create a method here, dispatch, to do new, just to keep it separate rather than putting the logic into one little place inside the actual UI itself. And so we want the app atom, and you know what, I always forget how I made this, so it has action and then parameters. Neither of those matter, so I just underscore them. And then I want to have our items as just, I'm going to make it a map for now. So I'm going to swap. So this is changing the value of the box, changing it for a new value. So I'm going to swap the app atom and a sock. So I'm going to associate inside the items. UID. I need to get the old value out. So app atom, item in new item. So I don't need to get in actually. I could just do this. Let me do that. Okay. So I'm pulling the item that we're creating out from the app atom, and I'm just sticking it straight into there. So technically, that's something wrong. Sock in. Oh man, that's not good. Yeah. So if I hit enter now, it should, well, it'll add it into my app atom. Of course, I can't see it yet because I have no way of actually seeing what my state looks like. So I just want to do that and string that. There's my state. So I should be able to not see anything. Why not? Let me just do a good old, because this should work. No. Whatever. Ah, man. It would help if I have it equal. There. No. Still not. Yeah, that works. Okay, so we're dispatching. Oh, yes. Keep on doing that. There. So every time I go, then now I've got items with the UID. Okay, this is actually updating the current one because I'm not actually updating this UID. It's just updating it in place. So it's like almost like an edit. So what we want to do next is just change that. Okay, I shouldn't actually create another swap, but whatever. I'm going to create a new item. Actually, going to create a new function for that. So I'll create a function up here called new item. Doesn't take much, and I just do this again. Okay. So now we should get new UIDs every time. I'm not sure why it's not adding them though. That's interesting. Item, random UID. Yeah. That's, yeah. And it is adding them. I'm just not looking properly. I'm looking at the bottom one instead of the top. Okay, so it is adding them into the thing. Now I need to be able to see then what's happening down here. So let me just actually also swap. This is item, not new item. That's why that's not disappearing. Okay, there we go. So the next part we want to do is we want to take the actual list and make it interesting. So we create a new component here to do item, make it run reactive, app atom, and then take this one here and just pop it there. And then we have it completed here. We don't want that to just be completed. So always. So we want to be able to say, okay, well, we want item atom. I'm going to need that later, so I might as well just put it in now. If the item is completed, then actually completed. Otherwise, it won't put a class on there. We want the title to be bound to the item, so just do that. This checkbox needs to be true only if it's, but in this case, I actually want this to be bound to the item, so that's where we needed it. But the completed field inside of that. Okay, so that should work. And what else does it need? Change function. Okay, for now, I'm not going to worry about the change. I'm going to use that later for actually. I don't actually need to merge that. I don't need it. Okay, so technically, I'll go buy the unicorn because I removed that one. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take our current items, which are sitting, gosh, over here somewhere. Okay, yes. Sitting over here, and I want to actually display them. So if I go here and I take the values, actually I don't need this right now, the values of the items. I don't have items, so I have to actually pull them out of the app state. So let the items be React. So this is one thing that I've learned is to try and get try and make cursors. So I could just react against the app atom itself, but I want to be able to go to the smallest thing possible, because then when that changes, it re-renders this entire thing. I wanted to do it on every app atom change. In this case, that's pretty much all that's in here, so it's not such a big deal. But so I'm going to be pulling this into items, and I can get values out of that because I'm storing it as a map, so that I can update it quite easily. And it would help if yes, that's what I needed that for. So I'm going to map over that, but I want to change them into to-do items. To-do items. Okay, pass the app atom and give it a cursor. And this is why we are saving with the keys as the UIDs, because now I can go items, UID of the item, and the item itself, to-do item. And technically, what's going on here? I gave it too little. Oh, I'm going to put it in the right place. Come on. I'm putting it in here. Why did that not work? Am I getting any items? Let's just have a look here. Ah, that's why. I always get confused. Here we go. Okay, so technically, I should be able to add items onto our list. Now, this also should be changing it. I haven't. Why is it not adding the completed? Let's have a look here. Well, we should be able to see. Oops. Doesn't help when I do something halfway here. Yes, yes. So if I go here, that's not updating. Why not? Cursor in, item, give me the right item. WCID. That's surprising. Yeah, that should work. Okay, well, I'll worry about that in a bit. Do this for now. Okay, what do I want to do next? I want to make it so that we actually push this new one onto the server quickly. So now it's basically showing how you can do the state, but I also want to push through. Oh, right. How are we doing for time? Okay, 15 minutes. Okay. I'm really confused why that's not showing. Why it's not changing. Anyway, I'm going to make it so that when we create a new item, instead of just pushing it into the app item, we dispatch that to send message to do new to the, and we give it items. So if I look at, let me look at it in a second. If I look at the back in here, oh, I don't have a new, so I can use save. So I use to do save, and then this I want to do when I on the receiving side instead. So to do update, well, I see I've got update instead of save. Just this is small semantic difference. And data. So part of what gets returned here by the server is a item here. So I'm going to destructure that to pull the item out, and then do this part here. Now what I get, that should, no, it's not doing that. So let's just see why. It's adding it though. To do start, not to do save, UID. Okay. That's interesting. Let's just quickly look at the network here. WebSocket messages. Okay, so I'm getting a null back. So I'm sending the save with items. There we go. That's the problem. That doesn't help. That's better. So now it's actually sending it. Okay, I need to implement the delete. So now it's actually sending it to the server and it's getting back, which means that we should be good for copying this, copying there, that. So technically, we should be getting on both sides, which is kind of nice if you want to do like, oopsie, if you want to, if I can resize the right screen, if you want to actually test it on different kind of sizes, whatever. So let's do that. Now we also need to say that if we start, when we start up, so we can actually load the correct state when we start, because we're storing the state on the server side. We want to just, when we receive the handshake, that's when the socket starts up. I'm just gonna send message to do start. That'll ask it for the actual state that we have at the moment. So then I just listen for the response of that. So receive, so to do start, app button data. Now it should send me back, so I'll check. It should send me back items again. So I can just swap item, sock in, or sock items. Oh, I'll just destructure this the same way. Items, item again, plural and stuff. Okay, so now we get actually our state back from the server when we start up, which is kind of cool. So that's all working nicely. Now let's just implement deleting quickly. Actually, I want to do the thing as well. Okay, so there's a button to destroy here. When we want to click it, we want to be done. We want to delete the thing. So here we just dispatch a to do delete. Did I call it? Yeah. So I'm just dispatching this locally. It's not a thing yet. And I want to just pass the UID of the item itself. I actually got this as UIDs because then you can do multiple at the same time with the same dispatch method. So yeah, I'm going to be dispatch to do delete item, and then this needs to be data rather. Okay, I'm going to send this off to the server from here. So I'm going to send message to do delete UIDs, UIDs data. Okay. Okay, so that should delete it from the server side. Well, we want to just listen for when it tells us that it's deleted. Of course, this gives us some UI latency if you're doing this over server kind of thing. So you generally want to update it locally as well before the time, but it just depends on your application. In this case, there's no latency, so I'm not too worried. Received data, and then when it's deleted, we can do a similar thing to the state here. So update items. Just so here I'm just sucking all the UIDs that it tells us to effectively, which will just be one. But okay, so have I got that on click? Yeah. Okay, why? I'll just go back to the network again and find out why, if it's actually sending. No, it's not sending on the click. Why not? On click. Dispatch delete. I should just have not done this. Yeah, fine, whatever. Okay, so now it sends the UID, but it's not sending a UID, so this item is not, this is not coming through. It's not sending it. I'm not actually sending this thing correctly here. Ah, no, this is the value of the item. That doesn't make sense. Let's have a look here. What the items look like. So we got a UID here. Dispatch. Data. Should be. Why is my well, my headphones just turned off there. Like,
sorry.
That's fine. Okay. Why am I not getting that? I'm not getting any data here. Why not? Oh, that's why. Because I've got the action first. That's silly. Okay, there we go. So that's working fine. And it's replicating across both sides. So that's pretty cool. Now it's just this complete thing that's a bit annoying. But anyway, yeah, I'll worry about it if I've got time. The next thing I want to actually show then is how we handle showing like the amount of items left. So we can do that by taking the items, we remove all completed items and we count them. But I've got this cool library called inflections. so pluralize that. Item and left. Boop. Okay, so that's correct. So if I could complete the thing, which I'll look into later, that would then update. And if we delete onto 1, that's pretty cool. So then the next thing is this whole screen switching thing. So let's just add 2 more roots here. Active. Let's make this active. Let's go completed. I think that's what their link is. Yeah, completed. And we can create two more views here with those same keys. And we want to just use the same component here. So I'm going to call that stage. For what's worth, all active completed. Right. And then we want to only show whatever's in the correct stage. So let's say filtered items. And we say filter, how do I do this in the right way? It's cond stage. Actually, I can use case. Yeah, case. So if it's all, actually I'm going to default to true. So I'm going to say if it's completed, then if the item is completed. And if it's active, then not completed. Okay, so filters items. Now we need to use this instead of items for our actual list. So technically, there we go. So yeah, we have no way of completing them yet, so I'm going to have to do that soon. But now you can, it actually switches between the different views. We do need to have a little box change, so let's do that. I see this selected here, so change that to class. If, put it in brackets, if the stage is all, then selected. That. Now we've already got a map in here, so we can't have 2 maps. So just join that together. I'll copy that part. And the class. Okay, so it's all active and completed. And then hopefully that should give us our thing. Yay. It's pretty handy. Okay. How are you doing for time? Good. Okay. So let me look into that checkbox thing. It's probably something really silly. Run React atom. Just check that that's fine first. Yeah, that doesn't look right. Yeah, that's null, so that's not coming through right. So this is not correct. Ah, yes, there we go. Okay, there we go. So that should now work. Okay, there we go. So now items left works. That's not working. That's interesting. So I've got something wrong here. Completed. Completed. Oh, I know what I've done. I'm looping through a map, and so I need to get the values out first. So that means we mustn't take them out here. Okay, so that means there we go. Sorry, 5. Fantastic by a unicorn. Tasks. Let's get rid of them. Who doesn't want to? Tasty ClojureScript, since that's what was there, sort of. There you go. And that's not replicating because we haven't done anything here. We're not actually telling it to save. So I'm actually just going to dispatch to our to-do save, and almost forgot the app atom. To save. Yeah, and I need to give it the item. So I need to actually, I'm just going to look at the value in the box. That's what the at's all about. It just pulls out the value inside this atom box. Okay, so if we send that, that should push through. Dispatch to save. How did I? I don't have a save, it's just a new. Awkward. Save. Save. And data. And then that's the receive. I need dispatch. Dispatch. Button data, and then we send message. Save and item. And I'm dispatching just the save item. I should just really wrap it in a map and then pull that out of the map. I prefer to do it. It's just something I just prefer to do is to actually be quite verbose. So I could just send the data directly straight to the server like this. But then you have to kind of, when you want to see what's actually happening, you have to actually like follow it through all the use cases. So I prefer to be quite explicit. I mean, for this app, it doesn't matter, but for a larger app, that it does. There we go. And that pushes it through the server and does the correct thing. There's no items. And that's it. I think that's all the major pieces. I didn't actually expect to get to this point. That's pretty impressive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks
Cool.
a lot. Yeah. So we have quite a lot of questions. So I'm gonna start asking.
Cool.
All right, let's start at the top. Okay, so first question, what is the Redux equivalent for ClojureScript? I saw some dispatches in the code. Is that native to ClojureScript?
The dispatch here is just my own little, the dev multi method is native for Clojure. Which this gives you give it a function and you tell it, okay, based on the parameters, what do you want to dispatch by? And you can give it a default value. So then you can extend that. So it's not built into this whole thing is totally a micro framework that I just quickly put together. There's probably more that you'd want to do if you were to actually build a dispatch framework. There is one for reagent. I forget what it's called. I'm using Rum for the React wrapper for ClojureScript here. Yeah, but I can't remember off the top of my head what the kind of dispatcher is that they use for reagent. I don't know if there's one for Rum. We've just dealt with our own little thing usually anyway. It's not exactly complicated, so.
Okay, cool.
I hope that answers the question.
Sure, yeah. Okay, do you use source maps for ClojureScript? How does the browser deal with debugging and visualizing the code?
So I have used source maps once, but then when I needed them on my live machine, I couldn't get the things deployed properly and in the live environment where this one bug that I needed to actually debug. So I ended up just looking at the compiled code and kind of figuring my way out from from there directly. But there is support for the source maps and they do work properly. I just haven't actually needed them.
For server-side closures, sorry, try that again. For server-side Clojure code, do you think the future is the JVM or Node with ClojureScript?
I guess it's more what you're comfortable with from a backend point of view. That's what's quite nice about it. You can kind of, if you're comfortable knowing in the way and the like semantics of Node, I'm very comfortable with the JVM. So because I actually come from a Java background, so that's totally better. The future is more about more targets like C#, that whole thing. As many targets as you can, that makes it really powerful because you can leverage the same language, the same semantics for the same data structures. You just like, if you look at the backend code, it looks pretty much the same as the front end code. It starts blending away your host thing. There are ways to make it so you can accommodate multiple things, but yeah, so to me, that's the future, not any specific runtime, but just more runtimes is better.
And the next one is, under what circumstances would you recommend that a person uses React with regular JavaScript instead of ClojureScript?
I have no idea. I would use ClojureScript every time, but I mean, I haven't I mean, disclaimer, I haven't used React once in JavaScript at all. I kind of looked at all the stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, I understand how it works, and I'm like, well, let me abstract away from it. Technically, I could go through an exercise of building my own version of React, maybe, but it's pointless. But yeah, so that would be what I'd say. I can't think of a reason, unless you want to not have the ClojureScript stuff around it. But I don't know, maybe micro thing.
Cool. Are there ports to ClojureScript of popular libraries like Bloomer, Material, Bootstrap? If there isn't a port for your favorite, how hard is it to use?
So I've generally stayed away from the JavaScript libraries, especially for the UI. So I prefer to have any kind of framework that is just pure CSS, because then I find even like complicated things like a date picker or other kind of components, it's simpler just to write them from the component themselves, the active part, from scratch. It's like a few lines of code and you're done. And then you don't have to worry about like, oh, they decided to do it this way or that way. It's just the same way as everything else in your own code base. So yeah, yeah, not that I know of. There is some things I think out there, but they kind of mostly I find incomplete anyway. So I don't know.
Cool. Are there many companies that use ClojureScript in production?
I think there's quite a few, yes, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how many. There's some really big ones. Like, I mean, I know locally, I know of Cognitech that uses it pretty aggressively. Not Cognitech, Cognition. That uses pretty aggressively. But like Newbank, I think uses ClojureScript. So, and this pitch that I've actually got this presentation on is in ClojureScript. So I think there's quite a few, but the magnitude I can't tell you.
Can you use something like Prettier for Clojure to help with all the parentheses?
So it's interesting because if you're using a editor, an IDE that handles that is for Clojure, like I'm using Cursive on IntelliJ. There's various, like for VS Code, I think there's one as well. They usually enforce the parentheses for you, so you don't have to manually close the brackets and that kind of thing. And they make you think of the code as data structures, so you can slice them, you can cut like whole sections out, as I'm sure you saw me do quite aggressively. So you stop thinking about the parentheses themselves are more of like, oh, I need this list over here, I need this thing over there, or I need to slice it, or I need to join them. And so yes, it helps a lot. And I've only got like a handful of keyboard shortcuts and it deals with them. So yeah, that kind of falls away. And then you start wondering why like this particular one, to move the parentheses back and forth, doesn't exist in all other programming languages. Like, I don't want that thing in my if block, or yes, I do. Like, can't you do that for me?
Okay, cool. Next one. Can you configure the ClojureScript compilation in a similar way to Webpack? How do you tweak it to output modern JavaScript or polyfill browser features?
I won't be able to tell you much about the polyfill Java browser features, but I can show you. So there's this. So it actually uses the Google Clojure compiler to minify, and it breaks, like, so over here you can see I've defined two modules where you say, okay, there's the base code and there's my like dev module, and where the entry points is, and then what it does is actually figures out basically in namespaces and your usages. It splits it based on the graph that it builds into the various JavaScript files. So you can actually control it that way and say, okay, I want this part of the app into its own JavaScript file, and I want that part of the app but using a base common library and that kind of thing. So you can control it that way.
Sorry, that was my question. But does it?
Okay.
How do you tweak? So whether you're targeting ES5 or ES6 or ES modules or ES 2020, because every year the browser has new features,
yes,
each of which is designed to decrease the bundle size and be more efficient.
Yes.
So how do you can you change that stuff?
There's a lot of settings in ClojureScript. I think it's on the ClojureScript compiler. I'm not entirely sure. You'd have to check. You'd have to actually check on the ClojureScript site.
Okay.
I haven't really needed to deal with any of that, so I can't really say, unfortunately.
Right. Cool. How do you debug on the ClojureScript.js side?
Exactly like you saw me now. The console, check the network, print out stuff.
Like very old school JavaScript.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's probably ways of doing it. I just find it generally like I don't need anything more fancy. This suffices for pretty much. It's my Swiss Army knife for pretty much every single problem.
Okay, what are the benefits of Clojure that other languages like TypeScript do not have?
Sure. Well, I think like one of the biggest things is the fact that it embraces immutability first. So there's no mutating things really. When you get a value, it stays stable. It doesn't change underneath you. There's like a handful of the actual like data structures and things that you have to reason about is very, very tiny. There's not a whole bunch of types and things. So it is a dynamic language. If you don't like dynamic languages, then well, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so I don't know. I find Clojure just very easy reason about where like JavaScript, TypeScript, yeah, it just explodes for me. So that's probably my major things. I'd say off the top of my head.
How big are the JS bundles and can you split and lazy load them?
Yes. Well, it can be. So it uses, like I said, the Google Clojure compiler. So it does pretty aggressive minification of everything you don't use when you do the advanced compilation. So it actually goes and figures out exactly what code you don't need, and it cuts it down. So it really depends on your usage of the base libraries that come with Google Clojure and with ClojureScript. So it's fairly small. Yeah, I can't give you an exact number, but it really depends. If you're just going to make a hello world, then it's going to be tiny. Yeah, I don't know.
And the splitting and
Oh yeah. So splitting, you can like I'm showing here. Where this is basically how you split. You can say, okay, well, start me with this from this namespace, and you can add as many of these as you like, and they basically go into different files, and you can load them as JavaScript. So if you look at here, where did I put that on the core? So I've just have them. They're just JavaScript files that you can then load however you want, type of thing. I'm not sure from a programmatic lazy loading point of view. I'm not sure. If you can't bring a script in, then you can't bring a script in. But
yeah, cool. So the next one says, where does the ClojureScript end and the React begin?
so the React like basically starts over here, and this would just be the React component name, and this will usually be in the JSX effectively. You generally have properties, but I think Rum in particular is it doesn't have that idea of like properties and things. So there's a very light footprint in that regard. So it just basically renders when the virtual DOM when in this atom actually changes that you react against. Okay. So yeah, you don't see the React very much, but it is actually running everything in the back.
So there's a second part to this question. It says, I understand the RAM dev C, but React uses class name, not class. How does that kind of thing cross?
I think it translates to this. I think it translates this to do new to a Harvard marshals it. I'm not 100% sure if I'm honest. I don't know how it translates into actual React components. I just know that they do. They work. Unfortunately, I'm not a React expert. If they change the actual thing underneath me and it still works, I'll be like, okay, whatever, which is nice.
Does ClojureScript have type safety?
You can do some inferencing. They've done some work on a library that does type safety, but based on its own, no. Yeah, there's no type checking at all. Like you'll get, if in Java land, you'll get actual runtime errors when you try and invoke on a method on an object that doesn't have that method. It'll just give you a runtime error. There are certain hints and things that you can give it. So if you tell it this object is a this, then if you try and use the method, it'll go, hey, this doesn't look like it's going to work, but it's not going to stop you. So, which has its own benefits because you can actually like randomly run stuff inside a live session and explores things. It's more of an exploratory, pragmatic thing. So,
yeah. And then it's a last question. Do you not really use the repo much in ClojureScript as compared to Clojure?
No, so yeah, I used the REPL a lot on Clojure, or a fair amount, before we got the library loading in Clojure working. But the library loading just takes care of most of the stuff. So you can set up the REPL into ClojureScript, but I just find no, I don't end up using it for most of the things. It's just sometimes it's useful for if you want to get at the app atom, but I usually just dump it on screen and move on with my life.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, Deon. Thank you so much for your talk.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And we've shared your GitHub repo in the chat.
Cool.
And yeah. So now for the second time in our nearly 4 years of running Jozi.js, we have had one of our speakers not show up. So unfortunately, we don't have our second speaker for today, which means that we're actually done. So you can go back to eating your pizza, and we apologize for a little bit less JavaScript this month. And we'll be back next month. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.